Let's try this one once again. Maybe I should slow down a bit. I think I'm going too fast. So step one is, first you need to realize that if this were a 1, then you could think what times what is negative 6 side if you add together is positive 5 if the a value were 1, but that's not the case. It's a 4, so you can't go with that plan of what times what is your c that if you combine together is b. So these are rare cases. Most of the time you'll have nice quadratic trinomials, but if you have a 4 right here, you have to go with the plan of converting it to a 4-term polynomial so you could factor by grouping. Okay, so step 1 that we had on the reverse side of this page was to multiply a times c, and a times c, that's 4 times negative 6, that is negative 24, yay? Okay, so that's our step 1 answer. Step 2 is to think of the multiples of negative 24. So I want to do step 2 right here. Let's think of the multiples of negative 24. How could you get negative 24? Negative 1 times 24. Let's go negative 2 times 12. Negative 3 times 8. Negative 4 times 6. Those are all the possible combos of multiplication that will give you negative 24. Which pair of numbers actually combines together to give you the b value positive 5? Is it 1 and 24? No, because if you add that, that'll give you 23. Which one is it? 8 and negative 3. If you go 8 minus 3, it gives you 5, and that is the middle value b. So we're going to use this pair of numbers. Step 3 says to use that pair of numbers. Step 3 says to use that pair of numbers, negative 3 and 8, to rewrite your middle value 5x. So we're going to rewrite the whole thing. Let me move this a little to the side over here. So we're going to rewrite the whole thing. It's going to be a 4x squared, and instead of 5x, we're going to have a minus 3x plus 8x, and then minus 6 at the very end, and of course don't forget to equal 0. That's ugly, sorry. And now it's ready to do factoring by grouping. Here's your first group, here's your second group. So let's actually separate it. And from there, we look at our first group. What could I pull out of my first group? Could I pull out a 2? Could I pull out 4? What could I pull out? An x, right? Just an x or an x squared? Just an x, right? There's 2 x's here, 1 x here. The maximum amount you could pull out from both of them at the same time is just an x. So I'm going to pull out just an x. Go with black. And when I pull out that x, what's going to be left over in there? Thank you. 4x minus 3. And the second group, what could I pull out of the second group? A what? 2. Bless you. A 2. Okay, so we're going to pull out a positive 2. And what would be left over in there? 4x minus 3. And of course, we're going to continue to factor by grouping. You take a step back, you realize what's in common in both groups. What's in common here and in here? I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I purposely have been writing the inside terms in blue. That way you could see when it comes out here. I want to pull out the 4x minus 3. And when I pull out the 4x minus 3, what's going to be left over? An x and a plus 2. Again, the x from here just comes down, that comes down. Notice the blank spots because these were taken out. And of course, you write it the correct size. You'll have 4x minus 3 times x plus 2 equals 0. Now this is where the zero product property kicks in, or you could just separate them and solve. So this first one's going to be the simple equation, 4x minus 3 equals 0. This other one's going to be x plus 2 equals 0. And if you solve that first one, it'll be a plus 3. Rewrite 4x equals 3. Divide by 4. X equals 3/4. This is one answer. Let's look at the other one. The other one's super easy. Just subtract 2. And your answer is x equals negative 2. So you have your 2 answers there. So this looked, it's a lot of work, I admit that, but it's doable. And the fact is, the more you practice, the easier it gets. So you guys are all watching me do this right now, and I know you understand it. But if you don't practice, you're not going to get it on the test. You have to practice. Let's skip to number 4. This will be the last one we do. And I am going to need some help, guys, from the calculator. Okay? So the first thing you should always ask yourself is there something in common? 6, 20, 23? There's nothing in common. Sometimes you could pull out a GCF that'll help you factor. But right here you can't pull out anything, there's nothing in common. So we need to go for the steps that we've been doing. Step 1 is to multiply A times C. 6 times 20 equals 120. Okay, so there's our answer for step 1. Step 2 is to think of the multiples of 120 that combine together to give you negative 23. Okay, so 1 times 120 is not going to do it. 2 times 60, that's not going to do it. That's 62. 3 times 40, that's not going to do it. 4 times 30, that's not going to do it. So 5 times 14, 24. Sorry. Gosh, I messed up again. 5 times 24. It's not going to cut it. But 18 and what? 8 and 15. 8 and 15 is our option that we want. 8 times 15. And again, the calculator is your friend. If you start typing this up on the calculator, that's the best way to find the pair of numbers. So 8 and 15, that does give us 120. And if you add it together, it really does give us 23. But this is a negative 23, isn't it? So, and this is a positive 23 when you add it together. So I have the right numbers, just the wrong signs. So go ahead and put a negative right in front of the 8 and a negative right in front of the 15. Are you with me? Okay, so that was step 2. Step 3 is to rewrite your equation, but instead of the b value, rewrite it as those pair of numbers that you just found in step 2. So let's rewrite the whole thing. It's going to be 6x squared. It's going to be minus 8x instead of minus 23x, minus 15x instead of that b value that we had before, and then plus 20. And I'm running out of space, so let me move it over, equals 0. Now the equal 0 is not important until the very end. What we're doing right here is factoring by grouping. So we're going to separate it into the first group and the second group. Let me put some space between it. And after that, I need to take a look at my first group. What could I pull out that's in common in the first group? 2x. That is right. So let's pull out a 2x from the first group. What would I have left if I pull out a 2x? 3x and a minus 4. Perfect. Okay. Now the second group, what could I pull out? A negative 5. Perfect. Now it's very important. If you would have pulled out a positive 5, you'd have to go back and erase, because you're not going to get the same exact binomial. Now, if you do pull out a negative 5, what's left over? A positive 3x and a minus 4, which is exactly the same as the other binomial in blue. That's what we want. We want the same binomial in the first group and the second group. So now we are able to factor out what's in common in both, which is that blue binomial. So I'm going to put that blue binomial right here, the 3x minus 4. And what will I have left over? A 2x minus 5. I want to write it the correct size. 3x minus 4 times 2x minus 5. And it is equal to 0. I forgot to bring that down. There it is, equal 0. Now I'm going to use zero product property to split them and solve. So I'm going to have 3x minus 4 equals 0 and 2x minus 5 equals 0. So I'm going to go plus 4 here, plus 4 there. I'm going to have 3x equals 4, which means that my final answer, since I'm running out of space, I'm just going to jot down my final answer. X equals 4 divided by 3, 4/3. That is my answer. The other one, I'm going to add 5. Add 5. So I'll have 2x equals 5. And I'm going to divide by 2. And divide by 2, which means x equals 5 halves. You could leave it as 5 halves. You could rewrite it as 2 1/2. Whatever you want. Both of those are your answers. X equals 5 halves and x equals 4/3.